All right, peace and blessings, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to the STEM Files. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. On tonight's episode, we'll be talking with Dr. Jeanita Pritchett. She's a research chemist and academic program coordinator with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. She'll also be talking about how she's bringing up the next generation of research scientists. Stay tuned for more after this. All right, once again, thank you for tuning into the STEM Files. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. My name is Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I'm a biomedical research scientist with a concentration in cardiovascular pathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. I'm joined by my right-hand man, Jabril.
Peace, love, and hair grease, everyone. Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabrilliant Engineer, civilian mechanical engineer, focusing on naval ship fluid systems with a background in material science and engineering. Also very proud and humbled 2021 Black Engineer of the Year Awards Science Spectrum Trailblazer recipient as well. But I'm excited, super excited to be on this show and bring on our illustrious guest.
Absolutely.
We're going to get further into it.
Yes. And once again, bro, congratulations on your accomplishment. You know, this is only just the beginning of what you will do, bro. So you know where I'm coming from with it. I'm proud of you, and I cannot wait to see what else you do in the future. But like Jabril always says, the show isn't about us. This is about the guests we have on the show and the dynamic scientists. Right. And the dynamic scientists and engineers that we bring on to showcase and share their stories with the world. So without any further ado, welcome Dr. Jeanita Pritchett to the STEM Files. How are you, ma'am?
I am doing awesome. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing great.
Yes, doing great.
Absolutely.
Right, awesome. Cool. So Dr. Pritchett, can you tell us more about yourself, you know, how you got started in research chemistry, and just talk about, you know, just your beginnings and where you are now.
Yes, absolutely. So hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jeanita Pritchett, and I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised there, but now currently, PA, black and yellow, what y'all know about it. That well, but it's okay. But I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but currently live right outside of Washington, D.C. And I've pretty much traveled all around the world because of my job. So I'm always asked, how did I get into science? What was the thing that brought me to science? And I really credit my parents. So I consider myself a bit of a unicorn in the field. Both of my parents were actually scientists. They met at Alabama A&M University in physics class, and they went on to get degrees in nuclear engineering from Howard University. So when I was growing up, they had me in every type of computer camp you could think of. They had me at Take Your Sons and Daughter to Work Day. So you name it, I was there. I had my microscope. Was collecting, gems and things of that nature. I was the little scientist. And so as I was coming up, I always had a passion for science, but of course went through that brief stint where I was like, I don't want to be the nerd. I don't want to be, deemed that the smart girl. So I kind of tried to, shutter what was my natural calling. But it wasn't until my 10th grade year that my chemistry teacher actually pulled me to the side, and I was doing okay in the class, but he pulled me to the side after our first 9-week check-in and was like, hey, so these are the grades, and these are the A's, these are the B's, but this last A, this is you. Now, technically you didn't earn an A, but I know you can. He was like, I see something in you that it tells me you can do this. And I don't know, I feel like it was something like a light bulb that switched on me, because I literally just kind of changed gears and said, next 9 weeks, I'm going to earn my A. I don't want a handout. I'm going to earn this. And from then I knew that chemistry was the kind of the discipline that I wanted to stick with. He would let me come back and actually be a tutor for his class and be a little lab TA, if you will, throughout high school. And so I knew going off into school, I wanted to major in chemistry. I eventually took my talents down to TSSSU, or the real TSU, Tennessee State University.
Okay, HBCUs on deck. Let's go. Okay.
to get my degree in chemistry. So I actually started off as a chemistry education major, but quickly after about the first year decided that while the education piece was nice, I realized that I could teach at higher levels, not the K through 12 level, without having the education background. So I wanted to focus more on the research aspect of things. So I switched from chemistry education to professional chemistry. And that was a really great decision for me and ultimately set me up for where I'm at today. So while I was at TSU, I did a number of internships and figured out the things I really didn't like, but realized I really had a passion for analytical chemistry and forensic science. So as I was finishing up my degree at Tennessee State, I started looking around the country to figure out where I could go to get a PhD that would allow me to take some forensic science classes, but not necessarily be enrolled in a forensic science department. And so not very many schools have forensic science disciplines or forensic science graduate degrees. But the one I landed at was University of Illinois at Chicago, which is obviously in Chicago. And I love that program simply because one, they were funding my education, but two, they also had the forensic science classes that I could take and be able to take them as electives versus being enrolled in that actual discipline. So I spent 6 or so years at UIC. And my research there was really focusing on understanding how different diseases like diabetic retinopathy or glaucoma or the natural aging process affected neurotransmitters in the eye. So the little things that send off signals in your eyes and how they may play into potential blindness that comes about. And so I got a very strong background in separation science. So I did a lot of capillary electrophoresis, gas chromatography, liquid chromatography, of that nature while I was in class. So as I was finishing up school, it was more about, okay, what am I going to do next? What's my next step? And so I applied actually at the institute that I'm at now, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, for an NRC postdoc, or the National Research Council postdoctoral program. And I didn't get in, y'all. Didn't get in.
What?
Right. But so you're going to hear that's a running theme. That's a running theme of my life.
That's crazy.
Right.
All good. I didn't get accepted initially, which is fine. But that actually was one of those things that it was God's timing, right? So what he wanted for me was I actually taken a teaching position at Chicago State University that pretty much set me up for everything that I'm doing today. So I started teaching at Chicago State after I finished. And literally 2 weeks after I signed my contract at Chicago State, my organization now reaches back out to me and say, hey, we actually have a spot available. Somebody declined, so we have a spot available. Can you come? And I essentially said, well, I've just signed this contract. If you all can defer until May, I can come. But if not, we're going to have to, figure something out. But luckily they allowed me to defer, and I was able to come to NIST back in 2011. So it'll be 10 years this May, which is bananas. So I spent the first 5 years of my career at NIST as a research chemist. So during my postdoc, I was focusing on understanding how different assays worked to measure methamphetamine and other clandestine materials that were found in clandestine labs. But then I wanted to figure out how can I make myself become essential to the organization. And our organization, we're known for making what are called standard reference materials, so SRMs. And there was a gap that I realized that was going to come about in our clinical, our forensic, and our food-based portfolio. And so I started working on projects that revolved around creating reference materials for different standards, as well as the procedures, developing the actual procedures, the GCMS, LCMS procedures for measuring them. So I've spent first 5 years at the bench, and we'll talk more about this with the pivot that ultimately came. But I knew I wanted to get out of the bench, away from the bench, and get into more management-based positions. So fortunately, a position opened up through the Embassy Science Fellowship through the State Department. And I applied for that. And again, did not initially get accepted. But once again, they came back to me and said, hey, we actually have a spot. And so I got to go to South Africa for 3 months and develop all types of STEM-based outreach curriculum for SciFest. And so that to me, really, kind of sealed the deal that I saw myself far bigger than working inside a laboratory for the rest of my career, and wanted to have opportunities to connect people to STEM, get them excited about STEM, and really show them the opportunities that exist for them. So when I came back to South Africa, I started working. I was offered a position to work within my organization as a scientific advisor. So that then had me working now with the lab directors and helping them figure out the direction that our lab should be focused on. Should we be developing our staff members? And that to me really set the stage for some of the leadership coaching that I now do, because I found that I really loved building people up and helping them figure out what is their career of their dreams and how can they poise themselves to get it. And then as I was finishing that position, I started working, I got offered another detail to work as an academic program manager, which is where I'm at now. So it really is a full circle moment where I'm now managing the very program that brought me there. So I manage our NRC postdoc program, as well as our graduate student measurement science and engineering fellowship program, and then do a lot of the outreach associated with my particular organization. Outside of my organization, I do a little bit of everything. So I tag myself J of all trades. I'm an adjunct chemistry lecturer at Montgomery College. So I teach Gen Chem. So that's where I get to still do some of the science and teach people about science. I'm also an entrepreneur. I have a business, JSP Coaching and Consulting, where I provide and help STEM professionals achieve the careers of their dreams. I also have a recent venture, Theme Forward Academy, where we actually introduce K through 12 students to STEM-based projects through hands-on activities and really encourage them to explore STEM with excitement, curiosity, and a sense of belonging. So I'm a little bit all over the place. I'm an artist, like I mentioned to you all earlier, and just have a ton of things going on beyond just working in the actual laboratory. So that's a quick, but not really quick intro to who I am.
Wow.
No,
I don't think we've ever had, I don't think we've ever had a guest go 11 minutes straight telling us about themselves, in the beginning of the show. So I enjoyed that. But I want to go a little bit back to when you said both your parents were a nuclear engineer or just one?
Both.
Okay, so we got to talk about that. So growing up as a Black youth in America, you're saying that both of your parents were nuclear engineers. That is unheard of. Tell us about that.
So yeah, it still is unheard of to me.
Right.
When I think back to just the moments when I used to go to my dad's work or my mom's job, they actually worked together at Westinghouse, which is a nuclear plant was in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. But yeah, it was almost surreal. And it's kind of cool when I look at where my career has gone and I parallel it to my dad and my mom. There's been so many similarities. My dad used to actually travel across the world to teach people nuclear engineer topics. So he now works as an adjunct professor at Penn State University. So he's still teaching, so helping people find their place in math. So it's just interesting seeing how my career has really mimicked his. Specifically, my mom didn't travel as much, but my dad, he used to go to I remember going to China and to Korea and all types of places to teach people. And I just used to be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like my dad is going to teach people that don't even speak the same language as us, these concepts. Right, and I would go in for take our sons and daughters to work day. And I wouldn't know what's going on, but I would just remember just being so fascinated with the technology that was surrounding me while I was there. So yeah, it was very cool when I was little to be able to say, oh, my parents are nuclear engineers. But I think even cooler now as an adult to really understand the weight that carried and how that impacted me and where I'm at today.
And what were some of the things your dad taught about, in terms of going around the world and teaching about certain aspects of nuclear engineering?
So I wish I could tell you all the details of which he did, but quite honestly, when I was younger, I had no clue. I just know he used chips. These little chips would be things that they were plugging onto, and they would put them in different machines. So I'm sure that's probably a conversation I should have with him now, is ask him exactly what were you doing. But I know he was working with them to train them on different instrumentation, helping them to understand the different tools that they were using. But the nitty gritty, I can't really get into those details.
Got you. Jabril?
Absolutely. First off, I always get very, very giddy, very excited when people use and aren't afraid to use technical terms, regardless of whatever area of STEM they're in. Now, I'm in my background as in materials, so the polymers, ceramics, right, superconductors, semiconductors, and more recently, fluids, pumps, things like that with mechanical engineering. So it always blows my mind when I'm met with the life sciences jargon and vernacular, which it forces me to really think deep and get back into that couple years of chemistry, 1 year of biology. So definitely thank you for that, and constantly those who challenge me, my intellect and my ability to listen at a high level. I want to get into something very quickly before I ask my question. Now, I've been hearing this term and seeing this term on social media a lot: high valued men and high valued women. For all of us watching and listening right now, that's who we have on the show right now, right? I'm not talking about, because I don't know how much she makes. I don't know what her pocket looks like. But what I do know is this woman sat here for 11 minutes, used rarely maybe one filler word to us about outreach, talked to us about international relations. She talked to us about her upbringing and what it means to pour into someone, right? She gave us everything of her mind to impress on us why it is what she does is important, how she adds value to others. And she used high level terminology to give us exactly what it is she does. So when we talk about high valued people, it's people who pour into you something that you didn't have before. So I just wanted to say that very quickly. You
Yes.
mentioned standards. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. We work with things like tech manuals, maintenance procedures. I oversee and facilitate inspections and validations aboard ships. So standards are very important and literally lay the foundation for what you should draw from to make sure you're doing something correctly. So can you talk about the importance of standards when it comes to doing technical work correctly at high level?
So yeah, I think the probably the way that it's most relevant for people. So one of the reference materials that I worked on was SRM 909C. The number probably means nothing to you, but if you've ever gone to the doctor and they've measured your glucose levels, your cholesterol levels, your creatinine, basically that suite of different biomarkers that basically say are you healthy or not, right?
Right.
That standard 909C is the gold standard that they also are measuring as they are measuring your particular sample to tell you what's happening, right? So why is that important? Well, when you're doing these analysis, how do you know that your actual instrumentation is working properly? What if there's something wrong? What if it's for some reason giving you much higher than normal values, but you at face value just take whatever number it spits out and say, oh my gosh, you have high cholesterol because the machine said you have high cholesterol, right? Well, what the standard does, we have screened the heck out of that thing to know precisely how much, whatever it is, let's take glucose, how much is in there. And so if you measure our standard and get the value correct, then you can have confidence in the value that you're saying is in this patient sample. So the implications that standards play as well, especially in like the biological realm or the healthcare realm, introduction of using these standards was able to cut out false positives or false negative reports, crazy amounts, like very high, because now we are using much higher order techniques to determine what value that material, glucose, cholesterol, whatever it is that you're looking at, how much is in there. And if you did not have it, it's very easy to say, well, yeah, you have some disease based off of the number that we're seeing. But if there's a problem with your instrumentation, then the standard will help point that out. So a lot of people will implement standards throughout their analysis as kind of quality control checks, if you will, to make sure that as every few samples, I'm still getting the correct value out. Because if I'm not, then I need to pause whatever I'm doing. Maybe I need to clean my instrumentation. Maybe I need to, sometimes unplug it, whatever it is that you're doing to make sure that it's reading things properly. So in that realm, that's where standards are critical. When you think about if you go to the forensic side of things, if you are convicting someone because you're saying they had X amount of alcohol in their system or X amount of drug in their system, well, how do you know that your instrument was working properly? Right. And so that's why having standards are necessary, because these standards, they have what are called certified values on them. And those certified values are the values that if you had to go to court, if you had to try to dispute something, that's what you can reference and say, hey, I use SRM whatever or RM whatever, and we got this value. So that's why we're confident in this number that you have here. So they play a critical role in not just, I clinical forensics, but we have standards for everything from peanut butter to milk to concrete samples. We have standards for literally everything you can think of.
Absolutely.
Mm,
I'm
mm.
so glad you broke it down. You said something key. You said they're like the reference, basically by which we understand what's right or exact. I want to break this down a little bit because this is very key. See, in society, right, in American society, we have what people refer to as standards of beauty, right? So again, going back to what a standard is, the standard is this is the measuring or the yardstick by which you place yourself
Mhm.
up against. It's a criterion to
Yep.
look at yourself or look at other people and say how closely do they adhere to this criterion. So white women have been the standard of beauty, right? So now getting flipping the script and going from the positive light, you look at standards. Now you look at the negative light. Okay, if a white woman is the standard of beauty, me as an original woman, me as a black woman, Asian woman, how do I gauge or reference how beautiful I am? Well, how closely I look like a white woman, right? So now you have the concept of a very scientific concept utilized in a destructive way. Another example, and Tariq, you want to help me out with this. I forget his name, that white researcher who basically set the standard for medical schools.
Set the standard for medical schools.
It was basically, I don't know if he's a reader, but it was on one of the lectures. He was a individual who basically said, kind of, this is how this is the qualifications for like you being a medical institution. You can actually get medical training here, and it counts. Basically, I'm forgetting his name,
Okay.
but the gist of it was a lot of schools, black schools, other schools, since early, I think in the 1900s or sometime,
Oh, you're
were
talking about
taken
with the
out of the
AMA?
running.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mm.
were taken out of the
Hmm.
running as being qualified to get medical training. So now it's like, okay, how are we using standards? So I just wanted to say thank you so much for bringing that up, and I want to show that there's a duality when it comes to standards. Um, let's talk about outreach. Talk about giving back. Right? You talked about how you started off very hard work science, and now you live a life striving to be of service and give some of that expertise you gained. What has been some of the most rewarding stories or anecdotes you can give from your work with children, your work with young folks in academia, or even other professionals when it comes to the outreach that you've done?
So I think, I mean, if I even just reflect to this past weekend, we were doing a workshop with a group of new kids, about 40 kids or so. And we were telling our stories like, I'm a chemist and so forth. And one little girl, that's so cute how they unmute and they can chime in, but she unmutes and just like, as soon as she heard chemistry, she was just like, I love chemistry. I want to be a chemistry educator or a chemistry teacher. Like, so to me, having young kids not look at the idea of being a scientist, a chemist, any part of the STEM field as being something that they can strive for, that to me is the most rewarding. Having
Absolutely.
actually walked into rooms and having people like, oh, the scientists are here, the scientists are here, or like, oh my gosh, she looks like me. Those are the stories that I
Yeah.
love, because the image of what a scientist looks like, obviously, on TV, we're getting better with seeing more, diverse images of what a scientist could look like. But, the bottom line is many people still just don't necessarily see someone that looks like me, especially with my natural hair out and about, as a scientist. So the times when I do suit up and put on a lab coat, they're just like, wow, like I would never have thought you were a scientist. So being able to change that narrative that they already have in their head, that to me is the rewarding part, and just giving them the confidence. Because a lot of people, like I was fortunate. I had my parents there that were very well versed in science, very well versed in math. So if I had a problem, I could go to them and say, hey, I don't know, understand this. Can you break it down for me? But a lot of
Mm.
kids don't have that. And so being able to provide that avenue for them to find resources, and for them to actually understand the science and the fact that science is everywhere around them, that's where the rewarding part comes.
Got it. Got it.
Love it.
And
Love it.
speaking of giving back and being in the community, um, say for example, right, you were in one of the worst Black communities in America, right? What would be some of the things you would use your background in chemistry to solve in that community?
Well, so it depends on
Great question.
the worst part we're talking about. So if we're talking
So say
about
it was like yeah. Oh, give me an
education,
example.
all right. So if we're talking
Well,
about,
mhm.
go ahead.
So pretty much anything, education, housing, healthcare, everything is just on the low scale.
All right. So let's take a few of those examples. So if we look at from the healthcare standpoint, I think using my background in science and education to actually raise awareness about some of the implications that may be associated with if you take even misinformation about the current pandemic. So being able to have a voice that can relay information to them in layman's terms, so it doesn't seem like it's something that's harmful or fearful, would definitely be a way that it could be useful. If you were looking at places like, the Flint water crisis, where you had, crazy levels of lead and other, who knows what other contaminants, perhaps using some of my background in developing assays or technical techniques to measure how much lead or different toxins are found in water, or just people to understand how to read. If you get like a little test strip, how do you even read that? Like, what does it mean if you have, a color that's in this realm? How do you know if you should or should not be doing it? So I think it's providing a face or a voice that people can trust, and someone that's not going to be talking down to people, but more so helping you to understand whatever the information is, whether it be healthcare, housing, education based. Just letting them know that someone is here that cares and can actually relay the information to you in an appropriate manner.
So
bro, have you real quick?
Oh yeah, good.
No, because I love what you just did. It's so funny. I've never had this type of interview, right? But I'm gonna say something like, when you asked her that question, my mind went straight to, dang, that's like a consultant interview, like when they give you a case study. And it was just like,
right.
I was like, you just gave old girl a case study, and she had to tell me about this situation. How would you handle it? Like, that was dope. That was real dope. I like how you flipped that. Like how you did that. That was
because we're an R&D company. We're a research and development company. So
you read my mind. I'm going right to something. Yep.
Right. I want to ask those questions along the lines of development. How can we take your talent, go into a struggling Black community, and make it a decent and safer place to live? So that's where we're at mentally, not only with the TheSTEMFiles or OMS, but as individual scientists and engineers trying to make our communities better. So that's always where I want to come from with the questions.
Yeah, and I think
I'm gonna ask the question then. Comfort. Go ahead, sis. I'm gonna ask you the question after that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's just about creating comfort, because a lot of people just don't trust scientists. I mean, there's been a lot of misinformation out there. There's been a lot of very horrible times in which people were used kind of as guinea pigs for things. So you need to create that trust. You need to create a feeling of that they're in a safe environment, and that they can actually take whatever you're saying, not that you're just trying to sell me something, but you're actually telling me because you're part of this community and because you care about the community. So I think approaching it from that standpoint, and not just, I'm trying to sell you something, I'm trying to, showcase my business, is always going to be well received.
Okay. See, I saw this post, y'all, on social media, right? It was like Facebook, and I'm gonna paraphrase, but it was like my generation, and she seemed like she was about my and Tariq's age. My generation has like lost sight of hobbies. Everything has become like a hustle, side hustle, this, that, and the third, and that spoke volumes to me, because I was talking to my wife, and I was like, babe, like, social media isn't fun anymore. Yeah. And it's easy to get wrapped up in the trap that you have, every post you make, you have to be concerned with how many likes you have, what the engagement level is, who's commenting, what are they commenting, what are your hashtags, how often are you posting, versus like, hey, I'm just enjoying seeing other people's lives and sharing my own. So I want to get back to the concept of community development. You being one who has done outreach locally, nationally, internationally, you being one in the entrepreneurial realm, right, in the academic realm. If you hear about a Black-owned R&D company who wants to deliver advantages to our communities, right, what does that mean to you? And then what is one thing, whether it be a tactic or something physically implemented, that you would like to see?
So to me, first, I'm like Issa Rae. I'm rooting for everybody Black. So if I see that there is a R&D company or any business, quite honestly, that stands on a good message. I don't want to say any business, but any business that stands on a good message, I'm supporting. And so, seeing people that are willing to share their stories, debunk myths, and raise that awareness, I'm always 100% supportive of anybody's business venture. If there's a way that I can support, whether it be sharing, referring somebody, I think that, one of my taglines on my kind of invoices I send out is always, the best compliment is a referral. So when you refer people, you're speaking to people's character, you're speaking to the mission of that company. And so I think just as a community, that's something that we need to do more of, is just, putting each of our different businesses or whatever in front of other people. But to your point about, what's a tactic to use to, I guess, elevate these things and so forth. To me, yes, social media can be very daunting, but it's more about not focusing on the likes, not focusing on the comments. 100 likes is great, but 100 likes doesn't necessarily translate to 100 contracts, right? So to me, I'm more about focusing on making sure I'm pursuing my things I'm passionate about, things I am, that are my purpose, and the money will come. The ability to,
right.
To your point, Jabril, you had mentioned speaking from high value. So for me to be able to articulate the value that I could bring to an organization, whether it be as me from NIST or me through my personal business ventures, that's what I care about. I don't care. You can like my picture or not. Guess what? I still signed a contract the other day. So, so trying not to get wrapped up so much in the hype of the social media aspect and having a following, that's awesome. But when you're doing the things that you're passionate about and when you're walking in your purpose, the following is going to come. The monetary benefits are going to come. So it's more so, wrapping your mind around and making sure that you are always staying true to whatever it is that you say your mission is, and making sure that whatever you're putting out there is reflective of it. Whether you get 1 like or 20, the person that it matters to is going to see it. And that's the piece that you need to just hold on to.
That's right. Man, you just dropped some heavy, heavy, heavy gems just now, in terms of not getting caught up in social media, and you said something very key, that likes does not equal contracts. It does not equal business. Likes is just somebody that saw it, thought it was nice, and hit the like button. That's it. And you said
maybe
the right
had
person
Reddit.
will see it. Right, and maybe
you give them credit. They probably saw, if you have a nice picture on it, they saw that, but did they go into the depths of your caption?
Right.
Not likely.
Man.
So focus on purpose. Now, likes are cool, followings are awesome, but I focus on making sure that whatever consumers I'm working with, they understand, again, what my mission is. It's very clear, and it's very, clear why you would want to work with me, why you would want to engage with me. And it's not because I have 1,000 people that are following me.
Right. And, especially over the last couple of days, my mindset in terms of what we're doing with Original Man Scientific has been focused a little bit more on in-house productivity and really making a name for ourselves from the things that we produce. So talk about how important it is to establish an identity first before you go out and try to build with others.
Absolutely. So it's kind of that saying of, you gotta, fill your own cup before you can start pouring into others, right? So if you are not clear on what your purpose is, if you are not clear on what your mission is, if you are not clear on why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, how can you convince somebody else that they should rock with you for that? If you are not clear on what what are your objectives, who's your audience? So those are questions I would say to anybody that's, thinking about going into the entrepreneurial realm is, ask yourself, what's my story behind whatever is, and who's the audience? Who are the people I'm trying to connect to, and what mission am I fulfilling for them? If you can't answer those things in a very clear, concise message, then you may need to sit down a little bit more and work on the why you're doing it, so that you can easily articulate what it is that you're doing. A lot of times when you don't have that very clearly defined identity, it's very easy for you to start getting caught up in things like the likes, and for you to be concerned with, is someone sharing this thing or whatever. But if you are very clear on whatever the purpose of your organization is, your business is, then you'll be doing things intentfully. and aligning those with the audiences that you need to see. But whenever you have no clear direction, it's how do you know when you're successful if you don't know where you're trying to go, you don't know who you're trying to reach. You start putting out content that is all across the realm, which is fine. I'm not saying that it's not okay to be well versed in things, because again, I just rattled off a million things that I do. But when you're trying to connect with audiences, you want to do it with intent behind it. So you very clearly know what my purpose is, what it is that I want to do, and who are the people I want to connect with. So anything that I'm posting or writing or contracts I'm putting out there, if it doesn't align with that purpose that I defined earlier, then it may not be something I need to put effort toward right now. Maybe later, but especially if you're in that initial stages where you're trying to get off the ground, a lot of things sound appealing, but they may just be diverting you away from the path that you truly are meant to walk. So when I'm weighing out, is an effort worth, should I be pursuing certain things? I always ask myself, how does that tie back into my mission, my purpose? And if I can't say it directly aligns, then it's like, okay, maybe I'll do it, but it's not prioritized. It's not something that's going to go at the top of my list. If I get some time to get to it, cool. But if not, I try to be more mission focused and not just take any and everything that comes my way, because you'll get distracted, and distractions are only going to slow you down towards getting towards that final goal.
Whew. Man, this has been amazing. For those who would like to know more about the STEM Files, we are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture every Thursday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Jabrilian engineer Tariq Cardiac. You can follow us on social media, the STEM Files on Facebook, the STEM Files on YouTube, and at the STEM Files on Instagram. Now, our audience is tripping right now because they're not leaving no questions. So for those who are watching, go ahead and drop your questions in the comment section. Right. Go ahead and drop your questions at this time. We're gonna, leave the last 30 minutes of the show for the questions. So please bring them in. Sabria, she's been a guest.
I gotta take it somewhere. Bro, I gotta take it somewhere, bro. I gotta take it somewhere real quick. So
go for it.
So sis, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm gonna start with some background, a quote, and then I'm gonna ask you a question. Okay, so you gotta rock with me. So I've seen a lot of this kind of Black woman against Black man stuff on social media, and personally I think it's unnecessary, and it's a really big diversion, and it takes our focus away from what we should really be concerned about. So Brother Tariq and I are members of the Nation of Islam, and what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase a bit, but he talked about the woman, right? He said that the home is a woman's base, not necessarily her place. I'll say it one more time. Said the home is a woman's base, not necessarily her place. When you talk about you as a professional Black woman, other professional Black women, I think about Dr. Corey, I think about Dr. Kelly Knight, I think about Naomi Thomas, I think about Dr. Malika Grayson, all these people that we've come to know on social media and outward. How do you internalize a quote like that? Is that something you can understand, agree with, disagree with, and if so, why? Take your time.
So the quote itself was, "A home is a woman's base, not necessarily her place." That's correct? Or what was it? Okay. So the way that how I hear that, I'm not familiar with that quote, but when I hear that quote, what I'm hearing from that is the home is kind of the sanctuary, right? That's the place that's your place of rest. That's your place where, typically women, we tend to be very proud of our home. So this is my safe haven. Right. It does not necessarily mean that I am meant to be a housewife or a stay-at-home mom, that I am not to be out working. So when I hear that quote, it's speaking to me that, the home is, like I said, my place of rest, my sanctuary, but it doesn't mean that I am stuck in here, that I can have a voice beyond these four walls. Now, what's interesting though, in the pandemic, the last 10 months, the home has been both my sanctuary and my place of business. So, right. all of the above. And, you know, for me, part of that sounds like there's probably some underlying tones of gender-based roles and how to balance that household responsibilities. So perhaps there's a little bit of that in there. And I think for anybody that's in a partnership, it's more about figuring out how to find your balance, what works, because what works for one set of people does not necessarily work for everybody. But for me, I think when I hear that quote, like I said, it really takes me to, I retreat to my house whenever I need my rest, when I need to recharge, when I need to brainstorm, when I need to think about things. But my voice is to be heard beyond these four walls of my
Absolutely.
house. So that's what
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's
thank you so much for
what,
that. Thank you.
Right, absolutely. And that's exactly what that quote means. You know, we in the nation, there's a misconception going around, you know, with those who are not too familiar with the Nation of Islam, that we believe in our women being just in the home and not being professionals, when that's far from the truth. You know, as a matter of fact, Black women really helped Jabril and I get to where we are today. You know, we're married to beautiful Black women who are both professionals.
Yes.
And
we're both under 30.
Very,
neither one of us are 30 yet.
Under 30.
That out there.
None of us are 30. You're very young. And we're passionate about not only being professionals, but using what we learn as professionals to build our communities. You know, so we thank you for all that you're doing, all that you will do. And I actually, before we conclude the show, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you do as a research chemist. I wanted to kind of go into some terms. I'm a science bug. Like I like the lab, I like the bench. So I always want to talk about that. You know, so talk about some of the instrumentation that you use to do your job, like whether it's HPLC, you know, different things like that. What are some of the tools you use?
So my bread and butter was GCMS, or gas chromatography mass spectrometry, or liquid chromatography with mass spectrometry coupled to it. And so, like I mentioned before, I'm a separation scientist. So analytical chemistry is my background. So I am far more comfortable breaking things down and figuring out what's there than synthesizing things and putting them together. So organic chemists, inorganic chemists tend to be the people that are building things up. And then I take that thing and break it down and figure out what's all in there. So with those two instruments, with chromatography, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that terminology, but chromatography basically is a separation technique that allows things to mixtures to separate based off of a variety of different properties or you know, fundamental ideas. But with the liquid chromatography or gas chromatography, the liquid or gas is telling us the mobile aspect of that separation process. So in chromatography, you have a stationary phase, so something that doesn't move, and then you have a mobile phase, something that's moving. And so the stationary phase is a column, something that, you know, if it's a LC, so liquid chromatography is normally like a column, like, you know, like this long, you know, can vary. If it's gas chromatography, it's a much longer column, like a coil, can be up to like 30 meters long. But inside of it's a coating of some either polar or non-polar material. And so depending on the mixture that you're trying to separate in the stationary phase, what's on there, the saying of, you know, like attracts like. So things that are more similar to that stationary phase, they're going to hang on to the stationary phase a lot longer. Things that are more similar to the mobile phase, they're going to jump ship and start traveling with that mobile phase. So what you end up getting is a separation based on things either adhering to the stationary phase or being able to traverse into that mobile phase and be carried on. And so you can couple those or bridge those techniques to different detectors, or basically like in real life, a detector is our eyes. So like we can see things. If I had a mixture of different things, I can separate things by color, by texture. My eyes are the detector. But in, you know, when you're dealing with, you know, very small items, you need something else. So you can use like UV or ultraviolet, you know, to see the absorption of that material. You can use mass spectrometry, which is also separating based on the mass to charge ratio of things. You can use laser induced fluorescence. You can use blanking on some other ideas, other detectors, but there's a lot of different detectors out there. So I was mass spec. And so what we would do would really separate things, and then we would determine the mass of things that were present there. So that was like I said, my bread and butter while I was working in the lab.
Okay, so we have a few questions here. Two from my wife, so we're gonna go into those real quick. Where do you see your field advancing in the next 10 years?
Ooh, in the next 10 years, I mean, I think the sky is the limit. So, first, let's just take the aspect out from the lab perspective, but just getting people to the lab. What the pandemic has showed us is that we can connect virtually. And I think in the next 10 years, we're going to have a lot more people from more rural areas or areas that wouldn't necessarily always have access to certain laboratories getting more involved, because now we've demonstrated we can connect to people virtually. Like, we're talking here, via this platform and being able to do, a great show. So the same thing is transpiring in the laboratory. We were able to offer virtual internships and things of that nature. So we're really expanding the touch that our field can have. But in terms of just the chemistry field itself, I see a lot of just more integration amongst the different fields. We're learning that there's not silos that exist in these different disciplines. Like engineering does not exist solely by itself. Chemistry does not exist solely by itself. So we're seeing a lot of just crossing over. You're seeing a lot of people that are considered, I'm an analytical chemist, but I also do biochemistry. So people that are more willing to transcend different things and talking to each other. So I only see the field going up and really just expanding the type of people that are entering the work field.
All right, so we have another question from Sabria Lateal. She's been on our show. She actually presented her research in albinism in cavefish on the show back in November. Her question is, what do you find to be the most rewarding aspect of pursuing scientific research?
So for me, when I was working in the lab, I was always very big on making sure I was going after projects that I had some personal affiliation with or directly impacted someone in my community. So for instance, when I was in graduate school, the work that I was doing on diabetic retinopathy, well, at that time, a few years earlier, my mom was diagnosed with diabetes. So to me, that was directly impacted. If I could figure out something that could potentially go into understanding what would prevent her from possibly losing her sight, that's something that was rewarding to me. So being able to attach myself to particular projects that directly impact, like I said, myself or my community, and bringing that diversity of thought to the type of projects we should be exploring. I know one of the projects that I worked on early on in my career at NIST was looking at how different cosmetic treatments affected hair drug testing. And it was the reason that where that was interesting is that there were studies out there that looked at things like shampooing and conditioning, but no one had explored chemical relaxers, like the straightening process that African American or Black women tend to use. And so being able to provide that diversity of thought to a project like that, like shook the hair testing societies to their core, because they're like, oh, why hadn't we thought about this? Like, this is something that we never explored. And it was just the sheer fact of having a Black African-American woman that could come to the table and say, hey, this is something we should be looking at and seeing how is it impacting the quality of our testing. So to me, being able to provide that unique voice to the different projects that we're working on, but also making sure that it somehow impacts myself or my community.
Awesome. We have another question from the Queen. She said, isn't GCMS used a lot in forensic science?
It is. It's used a lot in all sciences. So forensic science, pharmaceutical sciences. So this is a tip for anybody that's thinking about going into forensic science. Getting a degree, especially if you want to be on the chemistry side of things, getting a degree in analytical chemistry will really set you up for success, not only just in forensic science, but also beyond. Because if you can demonstrate that you have proficiency in this instrumentation, you can apply the technique to anything. So what kept me on at NIST was just the ability that I knew how to run the GCMS, and I could apply that separation, the skills and the knowledge base that was needed to set up a separation to anything. So I went from, like I said, clinical samples to forensic samples to food-based samples. I got to do some testing of the synthetic cannabinoids, like the fake THC that was coming out.
Right.
So you can apply it to anything. So yeah, it's very heavily used in GCMS, or sorry, in forensic science, but it's used any pharmaceutical company, Quest Diagnostics, like if you're getting any type of biological test done at an urgent care, they likely have access to a GCMS. So that's one of the things that one of the reasons I did not get a degree in forensic science specifically is because I wanted to make myself more marketable. And so I wanted to be able to, yes, I can do forensic science, but guess what? I can also do this. So if for whatever reason I lost that job or that opportunity was no longer available, I could easily get a job at a gasoline company, at a pharmaceutical company, at a national lab, because everybody has GCMSs.
Awesome. That's dope. Speaking of marketability, and I'm biased, I'm very biased, but if I had to say perhaps one of the most marketable professions would be to be an engineer. Why is that? Because engineers,
Lord, here we go.
I've seen engineers go into consulting. I've seen engineers go into hardcore engineering, engineers go into medicine, engineers go into law, engineers go into management. And why is that, you ask? That's because the engineer is one who is literally a slave to problem sets for 4 years. And so literally you learn how to solve complex problems in a very less than ideal time frame. They give you 5 problems in physics, talk about, oh yeah, you got a week to do it, and you still on 2 the night before. Why is that? You may have started the same day, but you now in the group of 12, nobody know how to do number 3, and then the TA don't know how to do number 3. But that's a whole nother question. That's a whole nother thing for another time. Thank you so much, Queen. I do want to go ahead.
So quick, I want to challenge that. I think any STEM discipline, any person in a STEM discipline can go into a variety of things. So I do.
Thank you, Dr. Janita. I appreciate that.
In the academic realm, I do research. So it's not about just the degree. It's your willingness to step outside of your comfort zone and explore the things and not just be told, oh, because you're a chemist, you can only be at the bench. So I'm going to challenge that idea. And I think anybody in the STEM field has the ability to be marketable and transverse several fields. Especially in medicine.
I agree. All I will say, there's something to be said about the engineer as using high-level applied science. There's something about, not to say that everything is theoretical in your other. She said, Charles Muhammad said, check both. He said, check my thing, bro. No, but that's actually valid, and I love just putting my little engineering plug out there, shameless plug. I must highlight another question from the GOAT African American history teacher from George Washington Carver High School of Engineering and Science in Philly, Mr. Milton, aka Milt. All right, he said, and you kind of went into this. He said, what advice would you give to high school students who are interested in being in STEM fields as a whole? A lot of times we talk about mentorship, talk about access. What's the blueprint, if you will? Like, what are some soft skills, hard skills you need to be honing? And then we'll kind of close out the show with you expanding that.
So soft skills, let's talk about those. So getting expertise in hands-on activity, awesome, but you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to present. You need to be able to network. So those are 3 of the main ones. If you work on nothing else, work on those 3. You also want to be able to just find out and explore the different options that are there. So look into internships. And if internships aren't something that are available, ask somebody if you can shadow them. A lot of people are sometimes like, oh, I shadow someone because I'm not getting paid. Guess what? That free internship or that free shadow is going to pay for itself in abundance down the line, because now you have something that you can put onto your resume or your CV that says, oh, I have this experience. They don't care if it's paid or not, but I have experience. And then the next is just to be comfortable with failing. If you're going into a STEM field, you're going to fail at things. If you didn't hear anything when I was talking, I didn't get certain fellowships, I didn't get something, but I stayed resilient. And so you have to be okay with failing and learn how to fail forward and take whatever information you can from that failure and figure out how can I use that to launch me forward, and what can I learn from the situation so that the next time around, I guarantee you ain't gonna turn me down. So those would be my biggest pieces of advice.
Gotcha. And before
the shadowing piece, that shadowing piece was so key. But go ahead, bro.
Yeah.
That is a big gem. That's a big gem. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Absolutely. No, I was just gonna ask one more question. This is from the Queen again. She said, "Can GC now this is going back to GCMS? Can GCMS be used in the field of immunology, specifically understanding autoimmune diseases?"
So
And I had a few that came to mind when she asked that.
So I would say yes. That's not my particular expertise, so I don't want to say anything that is not correct. But I would gather to say that yes, there would be some implications, whether it's used to look for some particular biomarker associated with the autoimmune disease, or if it's simply to have even if you're not measuring a particular character or something that you can use to characterize that particular disease, there may be some standard that you can find within your sample that, again, you're kind of targeting. So I would say yes, it is. But beyond that, I don't want to speak outside of my my area of expertise.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. So at this time, we want to go into and we haven't done this in a while actually. We wanted to close out the show with the STEMFile speed round. So it's pretty much a part of the show where we get to know you outside of what we're interviewing you about.
Okay.
So it's like a series of random questions, and you just kind of, go with the flow and answer the best way you can. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right, Jabril, you want to start it off?
Oh yeah, we're gonna start it off. So I'm gonna start it off with something that we didn't talk about, but I know you partake in a good amount, which is working out. So calisthenics or weight training?
Weights all day. I like muscle.
Nice.
Okay. She said big weight. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, bro. Go ahead. I'll come back.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I pray.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Right.
Absolutely.
I pray, and I have a vision board that's right to the left of my bed, and so I see.
Me and my wife were just talking about those, putting together vision boards. This to kind of remind you about where you're going and how you want your life to pan out. I'm looking at the quality of your camera, right? We were talking about this earlier on before we went live. And I thought it was an iPhone, but you're actually using a Surface Pro, right? HP. So iPhone or Android?
I'm iPhone now. I was Android for the longest time, but I switched over. I got my first iPhone. I got the XR a couple years ago, and now I got the 12. So now I'm team iPhone. However, I am going to say that the Pixel camera is even better than the iPhone camera. So personally.
That's what I've heard. I heard that the Pixel looked like you dang near, like the person next to you.
Like you right in front of them, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Man. Okay. Jabril, you got one?
Yes. Favorite hobby?
So former favorite hobby was playing football. As I play flag football, but I tore my ACL a few years ago, so I've been sidelined. Current favorite hobby would be paintings.
Okay, painting. Again? Matt, said painting. Speaking of painting, can you show us that beautiful painting behind you?
So that one stuck to the wall, I believe, so I can't take that down, but this one I can. So you may recognize.
Wow.
Oh, that's my God, that's a quick.
Nice.
Hey, that's tough. See, y'all ain't knew I knew that name though. See, y'all gotta get Wakanda knowledge. Come on now, Black Panther knowledge. Okoye, Okoye. You know what I'm saying?
Okoye.
You know what I'm saying? Gotta pronounce it from the throat. That's how I pronunciate that from.
Oh man. All right. So if you were stuck on an island for like a year, right? What are the top 3 albums you would have to have on that island with you?
Ooh, top 3 albums.
Yeah.
Probably Jay-Z, The Dynasty.
Okay.
Beyonce, which one is it? Is it 4? Probably Beyonce 4. And it'd have to be probably something else that's kind of crunk to keep me motivated. So this is a throwback, one of my favorite albums. I mean, don't judge me. But T.I. trap music, that I love that.
I'm not judging you. I'm not judging. His first 3 albums are my favorite. Ain't nobody judging.
keep me going. So yeah,
right. Yeah, those first 3 albums.
My wife from Atlanta, like T.I., that's like Jesus. Like,
right. Exactly. All right. So if you go ahead, bro.
No, go ahead, bro. Go ahead. I'll go after you.
All right. If you could meet any Black STEM icon from the past, who would it be and why?
Oh. How far past are we talking? Just someone that's older than me?
As far as you studied, as far back as you studied.
Anywhere in between.
They don't have to be, yeah.
So it would probably be because I've always had a bit of a fascination with space. I mean, she's beyond, she's older than I, so I consider her the past, but probably Mae Jemison.
Okay. Nice. And why is that?
Like I said, I've always had a kind of a fascination with stars and just the fact that you've been to outer space, like you've actually like left the Earth. So I would want to know more about that experience.
Yeah, I've always wanted to kind of see the Earth, from a distance, like not being on it. Right. I used to always want to kind of see what that's like. Just that vibe you get from seeing, the Earth from another angle, and not it being underneath your feet. That to me is incredible. And Jabril, what about you? Is there anyone you want to meet from the past?
I mean, so Black Panther isn't real, right? So I can't say Black Panther. So if I can't choose Black Panther, I really have to go. Recent history, George Washington Carter. I say the same thing every time. It's not so much I don't know other ones, but he's tough. Like, I mean, that tough. You're talking about. I think for me, what it is he really unpacks what it means for STEM to be infinite. You can take a product that people seem to think there's one use, and through applied science, show several, not just this is just a use you can do it, but useful things, right? Really applicable, and that's the one thing. See, for me, it goes to like, I think the concept of when you talk over people or like you do things for the sake of I'm smart. No, he did things that are intelligent but have great practical applicative like meaning, right? And I think that's really why I identify with that so much, because he himself was matter that mattered. You know what I'm saying? So like that just like really like hit me, and I thought that was real tough.
Yeah, same here. He inspired my work with the Navy Beam, man. That he was my example or demonstration of what to do, with my research. So him and this is someone that you may know of, Dr. Pritchett, Percy Julian.
Yep.
He was a chemist way back. Matter of fact, he was around when around the same time as Dr. Carver, and he can y'all see me?
Yep.
Yeah, you good, bro.
He was very responsible for the development of different types of steroids, so him and Dr. Carver and guys like Ernest Just, who was a biologist who helped us understand how animals develop when they're embryos and when they're fetuses, so these scientists that were around during times where, around the Jim Crow era, where we were still seeing our people hanging from trees, so that being a scientist in that environment and constantly being told that because you're Black, you can't do science, those are the fundamentals of how they were able to bring us to where we are now and pave the way for what we're doing. So bro,
I got two more, bro. Yeah, so my first one is favorite / most important quality in a man.
Trustworthy.
Yeah, oh,
Hmm.
I like that one. Like that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked that
Why,
for me. That was a personal question. It's like I wonder because I was like, am I that? I wonder like um
why do you say?
second question. The second
Okay, bro.
question is if you could have one superpower, what would it be? And you cannot take flight.
Not flight. Oh, it would be
Too
what's it?
easy.
Telekinesis, like the ability to be able to look at something and bring it over to me and
Mhm.
stuff like that. Now, when I was younger, I
Wow.
used to want to be like Storm, and I used to want to control the weather. But now I'm
Mhm.
at the point where I'm lazy sometimes, and I'm just like, oh, I wish this could come over here. So,
Right. The lazy power. The ultimate lazy power.
yeah.
Man. Okay. Well, this has been an amazing show.
Amazing.
Once again, thank you for your time.
You
And we definitely would love to have you come back on the STEM Files and talk more about what you're doing.
absolutely.
And even do like a little mini demonstration, for what you do, as a research chemist. So, um, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with to inspire them in careers in STEM?
So, I mean, really, one of the things I'm really harping on this year is just walking in your purpose. And so, really take the time as you're navigating your career, as you're in school, as you're thinking about what's next. Always ask yourself, what am I passionate about? What is my purpose in life? And if you're not doing things that are going to get you to either of those things, then it may be time to sit down and have some, self-reflective moments to figure out what are those things, and then pursue those. Pursue those with vengeance. And the financial aspects, things of that nature, those are going to come in abundance the moment you start doing that. So, biggest
Mm.
piece of advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're taught in the Nation of Islam, Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, "Build and your people will come," and that's the same
Come
principle we
on.
have to use.
Yes,
With that,
sir.
do what you say, do what you want to do, and
Mhm.
everything else will be added on to it. You
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you. All
Thank
right, so absolutely, absolutely, it was our pleasure. And Jabril, is there anything you want to add? And who is next this Saturday's guest?
That's what I was about to do it. So, like you were saying, we're at the end of the show. It's been awesome. It's been great. Our next guest this coming Saturday is someone that is near and dear to my heart, right? It's my little brother, the young
you.
king, the young goat, the young god. Amin Muhammad, a mechanical engineering student at Howard University, going on to pursue a PhD in nanotechnology. He'll be presenting some of his research in nanotechnology and mechanical engineering this Saturday, 6 p.m. Dr. Pritchett, I definitely would love to introduce you to my younger brother, just like on a side note, just kind of helping him navigate through that. If you talk about doctoral, postdoctoral path and just things like
Mhm.
that. But this coming Saturday, 6 p.m., he'll be gracious us with his presence and kind of go into his research. We'll talk about more stuff as well. So definitely tune in, tap in, be inspired. We pray you enjoyed tonight. I learned a lot. I'm excited. Don't want the show to end, but unfortunately, it has to. So love y'all so much. Until next time, your brilliant engineers, Reed Cardiac, Dr. Jeanita Pritchett. Peace and love.
Bye.
Peace.